Hi everyone, George here, and I wanted to introduce this video because it's very different to my usual style. There's no cinematic B-roll, there's no real eye candy, but it is very heavy on knowledge. And if this is something that you're interested in, let me know in the comments kind of what other topics you'd like me to cover. Hit the thumbs up button if you do enjoy it, hit the thumbs down if you don't, so I can get a gauge of how the video is received by you guys, and I really appreciate your feedback. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's play with one of these. Go on then, up we go. Good boy. Hi everyone, and welcome to the GFS gallery. Today we're going to talk about filtration and circulation in the planted aquarium. It's not going to be an instructional video in terms of biological filtration and the nitrogen cycle. There's so many videos out there, loads of great videos on that. But I am going to talk with a particular emphasis on how important good filtration and circulation is in aquascaping and in particular planted aquariums. I think it's a subject that's confusing for many, it's overlooked, it's quite complex, so the aim of this video is to hopefully simplify it for you. Maybe you'll learn a few things and hopefully make your hobby a little bit easier to understand and improve your aquascapes as well. Filtration and circulation, I'm covering them both in the same video because they're both very much interlinked. I'm going to talk about external canister filters in particular. These are my preferred option of filtration in most aquascapes. It means that the filter unit itself is not in the aquascape, so it's not spoiling the view like it would be with an internal filter. I also like the fact that you can arrange different media in the canister filter. We'll talk more about the media. And I wanted to talk in particular about a brand of filtration that I use almost exclusively now. It won't be a surprise to you who it is because their name comes up at the beginning of pretty much all of my videos. And I'll explain why that is as well. So let's talk about the filtration in the three general terms: mechanical, chemical, and biological. Biological isn't so much of an issue in a very healthy planted aquarium with good plant growth. The plants themselves do the vast majority of the biological filtration. They will happily remove nitrogen compounds such as ammonium and ammonia as part of their food. So when I hear a lot about hobbyists almost getting obsessed about what filter media they should be using in their planted aquariums, it actually isn't so important in my experience, because the plants, if you have a healthy system, they will be doing a lot of the biological filtration. And counterintuitively, you could argue that the more effective your biological filtration is in your filter, the less food the plants are getting. A plant's preferred source of nitrogen is via ammonia and ammonium. So you could argue that you should remove some of your biological media and allow the plants to use any ammonia and ammonium that are being produced by fish waste, etc. I wouldn't suggest this, I wouldn't recommend it, just to kind of get it in your minds that the plants are a very effective filter. I have used very, very basic filters in heavily planted tanks, such as nano aquariums. Sometimes I'll just use the surface skimmer, an Eheim surface skimmer, which is literally a tiny, small sponge, and it's more for the circulation that's producing rather than any filtration. It's almost purely a mechanical filter, and I'm relying on the plants to do the biological filtration. Chemical filtration is very interesting. A lot of chemical media relies on adsorption, not absorption, so AD rather than AB. It means it's chemically removing elements from the water and then holding it into that chemical media. Very popular chemical medias include Sechem Purigen and a whole range of activated carbon. And activated carbon is another subject entirely. There's lots of different types, but the majority that you can buy in the aquarium industry are suitable, obviously, for aquarium use. There's a lot of kind of debating whether people should use carbon in planted aquariums. A lot of folk will tell you that they are removing potentially helpful nutrients and elements from the water. I don't see this as an issue. I've used carbon filtration in a lot of aquascapes over the years, normally just to polish that water, get it super clear, especially if I'm producing a film or doing a photo shoot. And I've used it long term in many aquascapes for years, and I've grown very healthy plants with no signs of nutrient deficiency. So I can say with experience that carbon filtration has no real detrimental impact on plant growth. So I'll just get that out there. So we have nitrate and phosphate removal resins. There's also silicate removal resins. These can be useful if you have huge levels, out of sort of balance levels of nitrate and phosphate in your tap water and you're using tap water. But in my experience, actually just better relying on healthy plant growth to deal with any nitrate and phosphate. These removal resins can be expensive, and effectively, in a healthy plant system, heavily planted, lots of plant growth, you're effectively starving those plants of these essential nutrients. So by all means, experiment with Roa Phos or other phosphate removal media. There's nitrate removal sponges. If maybe you have a particularly high fish load, and so your production of nitrate and phosphate is going to increase through more food you're adding. So you could use these, but my advice is to not bother, focus more on healthy plant growth and just use basic filter media that normally comes supplied with the filter. Scaping Purigen is a very, very good product for, again, removing organic wastes. It removes staining, and again, it will make your water crystal clear. And the benefit of Scaping Purigen, arguably a better product than the carbon, is that it's rechargeable. Basically, soak it in bleach and give it a good rinse and dechlorinate it, obviously, and then you can reuse it. It's an expensive purchase to start with, but long term you may save money versus activated carbon, for instance. Now, very important is mechanical filtration for me. This is removing the physical debris in the water. And as an aquascaper, I really like to view the aquascape with clarity. I want the water to look clean. I don't want to see floating particles. And so mechanical filtration is really important. And it's basically acting like a strainer. The water and the dirt, etc., pass through a sponge or whatever mechanical device that you're using in your filter, and it holds onto those solid particles, and then the clean water goes through. Very, very simple. Now, some external filters will have different levels of fineness of sponges, etc. You might know already, mechanical filtration can over time turn into biological filtration. Beneficial bacteria will collect in that mechanical media and then turn into a biological filter by turning the ammonia into nitrite and then nitrate into nitrate, and then eventually, hopefully, the plants are using the nitrate as a food source. Super quick description of the nitrogen cycle there for you. Okay, regular viewers to my channel will know about the Aquascape Biomaster external filters already. Huge fan of these, and this is the reason that they support my channel, because I'm happy to use these almost exclusively on my aquascapes. They're a proven performer. I've been using them now for 3 years. I used them for 2 years before I actually approached Aquascape about officially supporting my channel. Let's talk about the actual product itself. Let's do a quick unboxing. So this is an Aquascape Biomaster 600 Thermo, top of their range at the moment. It's the biggest one they do. Let's talk about the filter in more detail. It's called a 600 because it is recommended for aquariums up to 600 litres. I would say that's being a little bit optimistic. For instance, I'm going to be using 2 of these on my 300 litre aquarium. And the reason for that is mainly circulation, and we'll talk more about circulation later. So let's just run through the actual physical appearance and structure of the unit. It's a thermo, which means it comes supplied with a heater. So the heater actually isn't in the aquarium, which is great for aquascapes, as we've discussed before. We want to avoid any ugly equipment in the aquarium. My favourite thing about the filter is the quick release pre-filter. I'll just show you how that works straight away. So we unlock that there, that comes out, and this is the pre-filter. So there's 2 locking tabs here, which you just press in, and there we have our mechanical media. We talked about mechanical media already. This is a medium-sized sponge. There's 3 sizes of sponge: fine, medium and coarse, depending on the livestock and the type of aquascape you're keeping. If you had really messy fish and likely going to be having large pieces of debris floating around your tank, you probably want the coarse sponge so it doesn't clog so quickly. If you have a lightly stocked aquarium and you want to keep that water super clear, then you might want to use the fine. I always opt for the medium. And also there's a carbon sponge, which we'll talk about in a minute. Because it's mechanical media, we can rinse these under running tap water. Even if your tap water has high levels of chlorine, That's no problem. We're not relying on this for biological media. There will be more than enough in the biological media actually inside the filter itself. So the great thing about the Biomaster pre-filter is it's quick release. You saw how easy that was to take out. Take this to the tap in the kitchen or the utility room or wherever you clean your media, running tap water, squeeze it under the running tap water to get rid of all the debris. Refit it, let's do that now. Make sure you put the cover back on, line up the locking tabs, and then there's a keyway here which you line up with the slot there. And then we lock that off, and then we lock that there. And that is the pre-filter maintained. Now, because the pre-filter is preventing any large pieces of waste from entering the main biological portion of the filter, which is inside the actual canister here, it means we can delay the maintenance of the biological media by months. I've gone up to 10 months before actually cleaning the media inside here. I don't recommend leaving it that long if you're watching this at home, but it just shows how quick and easy to maintain these filters are. And that is, for me, one of the best things about this filter. I'm going to be using this on my Aquascape 1200 in addition to the Biomaster 600 Thermo that's already in there. I wanted more circulation, so that's why I'm using an extra filter. I'm going to be using the Aquascape glass pipework set. I want to actually get around to setting it all up. That'll be another video for you. But yeah, it was just a quick overview of the filter, why I like it so much. Tommy really enjoys his Biomaster pre-filter over there. So here are the carbon sponges, perfect if you don't actually want to get into the actual canister and put regular activated carbon in. You can just use it as a pre-filter. And this will last you a few weeks, depending on obviously what's going on in the aquarium, how much impurities are in there, etc. But this is a really effective and easy way to get carbon filtration from your Biomaster. Okay, let's talk about one of my favourite topics, circulation, and one of the most important topics in a planted aquarium and probably one of the most misunderstood. Circulation is the act of moving water in the aquarium. Plants don't move very quickly. They grow, but they can't move around the aquarium to pick up the nutrients and the CO2. So we have to move that water to get the CO2 and nutrients to the plant. Back when I started writing for PFK in 2006 or so, I talked about the 10 times turnover rule. So what does that mean? If you have an aquarium of 100 litres or say 30 US gallons, times that by 10 and that should be the flow rate of your filter. So 100 litre aquarium, times that by 10, 1,000 litres per hour, 30 gallon aquarium, times that by 10, 300 gallons per hour. What that does, it means hopefully that the water is getting moved around enough for the plants to utilise the nutrients and the CO2 in that water. It's a very rough guideline. You can go lower, you can go higher. It depends on the style of the filter outlet, whether it's a lily pipe or a spray bar or a jet pipe or whatever, and also depends on where that outlet is in the aquarium, whether it's in the back corner, front corner, middle, etc. So there's so many variables, but as a rough guideline, generally speaking, the 10 times guideline is very helpful. I think it's important to talk about CO2 in circulation. This is where it gets, I think, really interesting. CO2 is one of the most important nutrients for the plants. Plants are about 40% made of carbon. For a plant to grow, it needs more carbon, and one of the best forms of carbon is via CO2. CO2 injection is a fantastic way for your plants to achieve more CO2. But it's not just as simple as that. That CO2 needs to get to the plant. For that CO2 to get to the plant, that water needs to be moving, which is where the 10 times turnover rule comes in. If you imagine an aquarium with very, very low levels of circulation, but high levels of light, nutrients and CO2, very likely there's going to be an area in that aquarium where the plants are getting more CO2 than the other area. So let's say, for instance, the back left of the aquarium is getting 90% of the CO2, 95% of the CO2, and the front right of the aquarium, the plants are only getting 5% of that CO2. These plants over here, they're going to be getting 95% in effect, if all other things are equal, 95% better growth than these. That means that these are going to be grabbing all the nutrients, all the CO2, this plant is going to be basically starving. And so you'll get some areas in the aquarium where plants are growing really well, and other areas in the aquarium where plants aren't growing so well. And a lot of people will just assume that it's a poorly plant or they've got nutrient deficiencies. But actually, a lot of the time it's down to poor CO2 and poor circulation. So this is something to really bear in mind in your aquariums at home. Have you got good enough circulation in your aquarium? Especially if you're using CO2 injection, and especially if you're using higher levels of light and nutrients. So the higher energy your plant and aquarium system, the more circulation you need. But as a general guideline, going back to the rule of thumb, the 10 times turnover is a good, basis, good starting point. A good example is my Aquascape 1200. We've talked about the Biomaster 600 already and why I'm adding it to the aquarium, because we needed more circulation. Going back to the 10 times turnover rule, one of these, the 600, is rated at 1250 litres per hour. That's about 400 gallons per hour. My Aquascape 1200 is 300 litres, or around about 90 US gallons. So one of these is nowhere near the 10 times. Two of these is only 8 or 9. So actually I could probably do with a little bit more circulation. Probably going to be okay. The style of the Aquascape makes a difference. Like I said earlier, the filter outlet positions, the filter inlet positions all make a difference. How your CO2 is getting delivered makes a difference, whether it's an inline diffuser or an in-tank diffuser. Top tip, if you're using the CO2 mist method, so you can actually physically see the CO2 bubbles in the aquarium, have a look at them. How well are they getting fired around the tank? In a perfect world, all of that water column will have an equal distribution of those CO2 microbubbles. It very rarely happens just because of the nature of the circulation, but we can aim for the best possible solution. So think about where you're putting that in-tank diffuser, or think about where you're putting, if you're using an inline diffuser, thinking about where you're going to put that filter outlet. Experiment and just determine sort of the best combination of factors to give you the best results. So hopefully that all makes sense. It sounded quite complex and quite scientific, but hopefully I broke it down into quite easy to understand practical terms, and hopefully you can use these kind of lessons in your own aquariums at home and benefit and grow more healthy plants. More healthy plants mean less algae. More beautiful plants mean you're going to enjoy the Aquascape more, and everyone benefits. So a bit of a different style of video today, guys. Very product heavy, very knowledge heavy on the CO2 and circulation, but hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. You take care and keep on scaping. Cheerio.